Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining another Moonshire Monday. Thank you for joining again. I know people are still loading in a bit. There's probably some latency between when the stream starts and when people can actually see me. So I apologize for that, but it makes the VOD a lot better when I just start immediately. So that's what I'm planning on doing. This stream, I'm going to be doing some more level design. That's pretty much what I've been focusing all of my time on doing. And, oh, come on. Why isn't this working? There we go. Kind of. No, it's working. It's working. Sorry about that. Still getting situated. We got a few people in chat. Appreciate you for joining. We got Cosmo, Game Pulse, and Eric. Thank you for joining. Appreciate that. Again, I'm going to be going through these maps. So the one I was working on last night was specifically this one. So what this area is like at the bottom of a cave. Cosmo, hi, welcome. Daniel, hi. Alpha, hi. C930N, hello. Thank you for taking the time to join me on this Moonshire Monday. What is the engine? If you're talking about Love 2D, I got rid of that text. You're a big fan? Appreciate that. Good Moonshire Monday. That's what I'm thinking. So I have a goal for the stream, actually. My goal is to... What is that? There it is. My goal is to not stutter and to try and speak without, like, slurring my speech, because last stream, it was really bad. Ghost Hack, did you manage to go over the Unity news last week about the runtime fees going away? We actually did look at that, but let's take a look at that again. I haven't read the news post, but I did hear that they were completely backtracking. Unity pricing model change. I'm gonna see if I can find. Let me see if I can find the news post. Okay. This looks like the right page. So we got changes to Unity subscription plans and pricing. I sound sick already. I hope not. Yeah, I noticed that too, actually, where my nose kind of feels congested, but I don't know why I sound like that. But changes to Unity subscription plans and pricing. Unity is canceling the runtime fee effective immediately. We decided to cancel the runtime fee. This means there will be no runtime fee associated. We'll continue to seat-based subscription model. That's fine. Unity Pro price is increasing. Oh, I did see this. There's no splash screen anymore. That's pretty huge. That's like an amazing change. So one of my biggest downsides was with using the free version of Unity is that it would like pop up the Unity splash screen. It's kind of an eyesore. So it's cool that they're removing it. But they are changing the price. I think that this is actually kind of steep. But you know, it's not that big of a deal. I know that a lot of people are happy about this. The runtime fee was definitely controversial. But one thing that I was talking about with the splash screen is that, or not the splash screen, the runtime fee, is one nice thing about the runtime fee is that it does kind of help with combating those like fake games, those games that are doing like the not real ads to get people to download them, and then they download the game and then they just delete the game because it's not what they advertised. Happens a lot. Yeah, do I use Vertex shaders? No. What engine do you use for your development? Love 2D. So I used to have a little message in the video itself, and I decided to get rid of it. So I'm hopefully not gonna have to answer that question too often. But yeah, Love 2D is my engine of choice. Pippa, hi, welcome. Managed to catch the stream. Appreciate it. That was my first. Did you hear that? I said I stuttered a little bit. Like I said, my goal for this stream is to not stutter. I need to speak very clearly, and it's gonna be better. So yeah, you used to have to pay to remove the splash screen, but it's not a thing anymore. That's pretty cool. And yeah, Unity personal is free. And oh, they did double the funding limit to 200K. That's pretty nice. That's cool. Yeah, so overall good changes, I'd say. I think that the runtime fee could have actually been a good thing. I think that the runtime fee could have been beneficial to Unity if they implemented it in a way that didn't like piss everyone off, because they went about it in the wrong way. And I think there could have been something good there, but yeah, it sounds like backtracking was for the best because it just rubbed everyone the wrong way for good reason. The whole retroactive thing, it's crazy that they tried to pull that little stunt. So today I'm going to be working on more level design. Why did I choose Left2D? Just because I tried all of them, and that was the one I liked the most. And that's normally what I recommend to people, is to try out a bunch of them and see which one just clicks with you the most. So if you give me a moment, I'm going to create a new map. So this is D4. I need to create C4 Underground. So I'm going to change this to C4. So before I do any map editing, I need to take this file that I just created and change this D4 to C4. And that's it. So now I can open up this map. And it's the same as this other one that I just copied over. But what I'm going to do is remove everything from the bottom. I'm going to take this and move it up, or move it down. There we go. Because this map is going to be situated above this one. So what I'm doing is making the map where when you walk up, like up this direction, you'll be transferred over to this map. So it needs to line up exactly in that way. Does Left2D have its own Lua code editor? So no, most frameworks you have to use external tools to do any sort of work with it. So Left2D it's just a series of libraries, and I do all my coding in VS Code. And like this level editor isn't Left2D. This is just a third-party level editor. Hey Chalke, Tile is obviously amazing software, but was wondering if you ever considered building your own Moonshire map editor to help building maps faster. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an option. I actually don't know if it would make things any faster. It would certainly make things more convenient. And when I start working on mods, I would absolutely consider making some official map editor, because I think that would be a neat thing to include. And, you know, at first I was kind of opposed to doing sort of in-game or like my own editors, but like an example is the shader editor that I made. So if I go to shaders, I can change, like, I showed this on stream earlier. So like I can boost the blue values and I can make everything really, really, really blue. And it's nice to be able to test out these changed values like in engine, because you can see how, like, look how blue everything is now. It's cool to be able to like try out these different changes like immediately. So I can change dark, or I could make everything desaturated. Do you have to code the shader? Yeah, I do. That's one of the challenges with working with Left2D. I'd say level design and shaders are one of the more difficult aspects, because with shaders, let's see, I'll show the shader code. Is there a maximum RGB value? Nope, you can adjust the shaders as much as you want. So like, yeah, like saturation, for example, I wrote this shader, or actually it looks like I took it, or I based it off of someone else's shader, and it uses this algorithm to apply the shader and it mixes it. But you can also boost it above 1. You could even go all the way up to 2 if you wanted to. So that is a cool thing. So doing something similar to this with level design, where it's like, for example, I'm going to go do a different map so I don't have it all blue. Okay, back to normal. So, like, for example, all these blades of grass that you see here, these have to be manually placed into the game, or into the map, I should say. And it looks a little bit odd, because if I go to that map, you see that it's just all these pins. It's just all these, like, little pointer values. And it doesn't actually show you what it looks like. It just shows you the positions of all of these different plants. And it would be nice if I could see what the plants actually look like, because sometimes, or the trees, for example, like this is a tree right here that I'm circling. And it would be nice if I could see what this tree looks like, because the tree is actually big. If I go into the game, like the tree covers up part of the wall. And sometimes when I'm placing these different just like pointers down, it doesn't always line up with where I want it to be. And then I just have to like reorganize things. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Is that Lua? Yeah, I use Lua coding. And the engine is Love2D, and the engine is Lua. I'm going to try and find a different way to communicate that better, because I understand that that's a really common question people have, is what engine and what. And on one hand, I want people to know, and I used to have, where is it? I used to have this text on screen, but it's kind of an eyesore having this text on screen all the time. So I like in the YouTube title, I have hashtag Love2D and hashtag Lua. I think that might help a little bit, but at the same time, I need to think of a different way to make it more clear. So if anyone has any ideas for what I could do to help communicate that better, that might be nice. A little laggy, I know. The latency between when people chat and when I'm able to see it is pretty long. It's like 20 seconds. I tried to do my best to fix that. I don't really know what to do, because even when I changed it to ultra low latency, it would either cause the stream to lag, or it was just, it wouldn't really do ultra low latency. So I'm sorry that my questions are sorry that the questions are answered a little bit later than when you post them, but a pinned comment, that's not a bad idea. That's actually a pretty good idea. An overlay for the stream? Well, I mean, that's, oh, you mean like a surrounding box or something? That's not a bad idea. I could do something like that. So then like the video itself would be unobstructed, but then there's like a border around the screen, like what streamers do. That's not, I like that idea. Game Pulse sent a cookie. Thank you so much for the cookie. That's very kind. A cookie sounds pretty nice right now, actually, if I'm being honest. So let's go over to the new map that I made, which is C4. And let's just start building this out. I have a plan on paper, what I want this map to kind of look like, and it's really basic. This is a simple map. So first off is over here. TK4TK, thanks for joining. Appreciate that. Let's see what I was doing. So in this map, what I was talking about before is how the new map that I'm creating is I want to be able to like walk up this path like up here or up here, and it connects to here. So this section over here on the left, it's just a small little corridor. It's meant to be like a hidden alcove where it has a chest. So I'm going to go ahead and make that. Oops, we need the gray wall. So it's just gonna be like this. Just a really small alcove. It doesn't have to be anything major. And then I need to put in the tiles. That'll do it. How many hours a day would you say you work my game? Yeah, 25 hours is close, but I treat it like a full-time job. I would say that I'm maybe actively working, like sitting at my computer working, maybe like 5 or 6 hours. But if I'm not sitting at my desk working, I'm either like on my iPad planning things out, or writing a script, or just thinking about what I need to do. So like, you know, actively working is questionable. I wouldn't say I'm sitting at my desk for 8 hours a day, but I'm certainly thinking and working on the game in some capacity, like pretty much all day, every day. This is my full-time job now. I don't really make too much money from it yet, but I will. I saved up enough money from I saved up enough money from my career to be able to do this, so it's not really too pressing. But I do want to get this game done so I can start selling it. It is going to sell for money. I know people ask how much money it's going to sell for. I don't know exactly. The goal currently is to be something around like $10 USD, but it just depends. It depends on how good the final product is. I think a lot of people have a little bit too much like attachment to the price of their game, because I see some indie games out there that are priced very aggressively, meaning they're expensive, and like I get the desire to do that because you work hard on a game, and it'd be nice to get like a good compensation for it. But at the same time, people are only willing to spend so much money, so you got to be careful with how much you're charging. I talked about before how I see Steam as like a competition. You're basically competing with every other game at a similar price point. So if your game just doesn't quite add up to everything else, then it's not going to sell. And in that case, I think that you should just reduce the price of the game. So sure, like I'm aiming for $10 right now. But if it turns out that's too expensive and it's not really worth the value, then I'll just lower it. And that wouldn't be that big of a deal. Above that, I think that would be unlikely. But you never know. Let's try and get this fit in there a little bit better. Something like that. So sometimes you sell more by selling for less. You absolutely will sell more units. And to me, that's more important than like the dollar amount that you make. Of course, everyone wants to make money off their games. That's normal. But at the same time, I really am more interested in just having people play it, because I can make money in other ways. How did I want this to look? I think I'm gonna have it look sort of like this, maybe. I'll just do a first like rough draft. It doesn't have to be perfect, because this definitely will not be the final version. It never is. Okay, we're gonna do, yeah, like that. Okay, that's really basic, but it's fine. Let's put in a little one of these. Okay. Vampire Survivors is $3. Did they raise their price? I remember that they changed the price at some point. I'm actually gonna look it up. But Vampire Survivors is 100% worth it. That game is really, really good. So I'm gonna look up Vampire Survivors. Yeah, they raised it to $5, at least in the US, which I is perfectly fine. So, by the way, I wanted to mention this. How I saw a clip from Pirate Software where he was talking about how he was frustrated with Vampire Survivors for raising the price from $3 to $5. And I understand that, because on one hand, they're just getting more money for the same product. But also, I don't see too much of a problem with raising prices when your product is successful, because people are willing to pay whatever whatever the value is. Like products in like Walmart or whatever store, they change prices all the time. So I'm not very concerned about changing prices, especially when like it's Vampire Survivors. It succeeded in a major way, and everyone wanted to play it because it's actually good. And if people are willing to spend $5 for the game, I think that he should charge $5. What the market will bear. That's a good quote. So let's try and get this working. So this area is like water themed, and I need to get my dumb tile layer sometimes gets screwed up. Okay, that's fine. So what this is gonna be, can you do cave water? Yeah, so I'll actually show what this area looks like in game before I start working on the map, so you can kind of get an idea. Let's see, export. Add a gay dog because you can, and there's no reason not to. That's an interesting suggestion. I would say that's one of the more interesting suggestions I received. I don't know how I can communicate that the dog is gay, though. That would be a problem. Do you think about varying price according to the country? Yeah, that's something that we actually talk about on the stream once in a while, because I get why that's important, because certain economies, certain countries have a different amount of disposable income to spend on things like games. So a country, I don't remember what the examples are. I think it was like Brazil or something, where ideally the games should cost a lot less than they do in the US, because just people don't have quite as much disposable income, or the prices are like disproportionate. Yeah, so the dollar is worth 5 times the real. Yeah, so in that case, that does seem like a valid example, but there are some counterpoints to doing regional pricing. One example is people can VPN into whatever price point they want and get the game for whatever price. So it's something to consider, but I don't think that's as big of an issue, because I don't think most people would do that. And also, if they're going to go through the process of VPNing into a different region to buy the game, they're probably also willing to just pirate the game outright and not pay anything for it. So a lot of people say like the biggest reason that pirating even happens is because like the game just isn't accessible, and making good pricing is part of that, like accessibility options, I guess. Game looks great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Netflix in Argentina is cheaper. Would it be possible to see the main game loop? So kind of. I mean, the game's kind of in a funny state right now, but basically, let me go to the underground because that's what I'm kind of working on right now. Wow, it's dark. Let me get a torch. So the game loop is just exploring and then fighting, but there's also obstacles and you get to navigate yourself and figure out what you need to do. So the part I'm working on is over here. Past this water area, I'm going to walk on the water because I can. And the new area is over here. So this is the new area I'm working on. It's like an underground, water-themed area, something or other. And like I said, the next map that we're working on is right up north. And I just made the map, so this should work. Yeah, so that portion that I just filled in right here, this is where I am in the game, and it works. But this section over here obviously is unfinished, so it's just like a big blank empty room. And that's what I'm kind of like working on filling in at the moment. And Shadowkid inspired me. Well, I appreciate that. It makes me feel really good that people feel that way about my videos. Is there any rare weapons? So part of a goal that I'm having with this game is I want to make pretty much every weapon be equally viable. Except, like, maybe there can be 1 or 2 rare weapons. But at the moment, no. At the moment, they're all pretty much well-balanced. And that's something I'm going for, at least at first. Maybe in the end game, there can be a couple weapons that are objectively better. But I also like it when, like, anyone can use whatever weapon they want, and they're all good. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. How do you do animated tiles for the water? That's a good question, because that took me a long time to figure out. And, like, I say that I figured it out, but I didn't really figure it out. All I did was utilize some paid asset pack and merged it with my own sprites. So I think this is where it came from, is these tiles here. So it's 8 different images. It's 8 different frames of the animation. And I can actually show that over in water. So like over here above, whoops, let me move this a bit more. So like right above my head, all this stuff, these are the animated tiles. And there's 8 different frames of the animation. So this is the first frame, this is the second frame, this is the third frame, and so on, all the way to 8. And it just goes through each one by one in tiled. You can set tiles to animate themselves in tiled. So that's kind of how that works out. But it looks really good, but it took a while to experiment with a bunch of different tile sets and different animation types. I really like this one. I think this one looks really, really nice. It's super smooth, and overall, yeah. What's mostly the reward for exploring, though? I would say, I mean, the game has goals where you're actually like trying to save people or fighting off enemies. Like, yeah, sure, right now it's empty. Like, all of this stuff is empty right now because I haven't put anything. But yeah, when you explore, you find chests, like Puzzle Dev says, and you'll find other unlockables. And so like, if you went to town, where is this? Whoops. I might as well show this. So this is the first fight that you get into. It's with a bunyip. And ooh, that gets a little bit buggy. That's fine. And the whole idea is you can't get into the town until you beat both of these, or until you like clear off these enemies. This looks a little bit strange. This is actually the first time I used the torch to fight these guys. It's not that bad. Yeah, animated tiles. If you look up a guide online, I'm sure you'll be able to find some information on how to get animated tiles in tiled working. But I use it a lot. I use it... Well, I shouldn't say I use it a lot. I pretty much only use it for water. I use it for the waterfall. Let me see what else. What else do I use it for? There's not very many things that you need to animate. Oh, this whirlpool. I guess it still counts as water, though. Yeah, actually, I don't think I animate any other tiles. Most of the other movement comes from, like, actual objects in the game. Will there be a door fee in the game, like in the original Legend of Zelda? A door fee? A door fee? I'm trying to remember what door fees are in the original. Because you could go into caves and, like, pay for secrets. I don't remember a door fee. I remember a few quests where you have to spend money to get, like, certain items. Like, you have to buy the meat in order to get past that guy. That's kind of like a door fee. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you mean by door fee, if you can clarify binary. Do a barrel roll? Well, I mean, like, my dodge roll is basically like a barrel roll. I wouldn't say it's that much different. But back to the map I was working on. Let's go ahead and get back to designing this one. Where is it? C4 is what I'm looking for. So I keep saying like C4, D4, A1. The game is set up in a grid where like A is the row and 2 is the column. So whenever I say like C4, it's row C, column 4. Alex Hill, hi, welcome. We got Square Peg, we got O, we got Abornth. We got Allfather, hi, welcome in. Is Moonshire going to have an overarching story? It definitely is, and I'm putting a lot of work into that into this upcoming Steam release, because if you play the Steam demo right now, it really doesn't have a story. There's like a little opening thing, but overall there's not really a story. I put a lot of work into making things have more of a goal and more of stuff to do, because it felt really aimless to just wander around and just do stuff without much of a goal. But now I've actually added certain ideas for what you're trying to do, and it'll make a lot more sense once I put the whole thing out. You should have a character named Bob who tells you to sub to Childcade. Yeah, maybe I could put some kind of self-insert. That's a funny idea. Let's see, inverse ornate. But your YouTube didn't refresh. I'm sorry to hear that. So this room is going to be like a fight encounter. But how big can I make the arena? I think I need to move all this stuff down, actually. So let's move... Let's move this down too, actually. That's probably big enough. Will there be new merchants in different areas? I have a lot of ideas for how I'm doing, like, buying and selling stuff. So, one thing that I'm being cautious of is any rewards that I add, or, like, resources that you can collect, like seeds or feathers or, I don't know, whatever else is going to be in the game. There has to be a good use for it. So, like in Wind Waker, you can find the phoenix feathers or the joy pendants or the knight's crests. You can find all of those collectibles, the spoils, but they're like useless. You can't really use them for anything. There's one quest with each of those items. So like once you get all the joy pendants, you're basically done. And once you get the knight's crest, it's like the phoenix feathers have one heart piece attached to it. The knight's crests have one reward attached to it. And I don't like that. So Instead, what I'm planning is you can find these different resources like gold and seeds. My head's blocking it. Diamonds and charcoal, for example. All of these are going to be used kind of like a currency, where certain activities or NPCs will accept them as payment for something. And that way, there's always multiple options for all of the resource types. So basically, it's like if Wind Waker there was that you could go to with joy pendants instead of just the one, because then you have to actually make a choice. And that's something that's really important to games, in my opinion, is having some kind of choice. But when you're collecting joy pendants in Wind Waker and you only have one thing to do with it, it feels a little bit hollow. So I'm trying to avoid that. Am I enjoying streaming? Excuse me. Am I enjoying streaming weekly? Yes, I am. I enjoy it a lot. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it so much because I don't know why, but I'm surprised and impressed by how much I like it. And one thing that I like about it too is that I feel like I'm getting better at speaking. I have a problem with stuttering and slurring my speech a lot. I know that my videos don't make it sound that way because I edit them really well, but I in real life, I stutter a lot, and I genuinely think that streaming has been helping a lot with it, even though I still do stutter quite a bit on stream, and I make mistakes and slur my speech a lot. It's good practice. It's good practice. I'm really, really enjoying it. So even if like this isn't uber productive work, it's not. I just like talking to people, and I like talking in general. It's also like helpful with stream of consciousness speaking, if that makes sense, because part of the challenge with streaming I found is that I need to keep talking basically always, or ideally, like a good stream has someone talking pretty much at all times, and you know that's something that I didn't think I would be good at, but I think I'm doing pretty good. I think that I have a pretty decent track record of always saying something. What I don't have a good track record with is always saying something without stuttering. That's the part that I struggle with. Chalcade, you're doing great. Appreciate that, T4TK. Are the fees for when you break down the door... Oh, okay. Let me read this. There are fees in the original Legend of Zelda for when you break down the door of a secret area that are pure punishments in the form of Easter eggs. I do remember that. I'm not going to add that because it's annoying, but I remember those. And I honestly, I think that takes away from the game a little bit because it just encourages you to use a guide. And I think that's one of the biggest downsides of the original Legend of Zelda is that optimal gameplay does require a guide, because otherwise you have to reload every single screen and throw fire on every single tree or put a bomb on every single wall in hopes of finding one of those secret areas. And then, like you said, you might find it and it'll just screw you over. It'll just take away rupees instead. So it would be like a weird net negative. And yeah, so I don't think I'm going to be adding something like that, but that is a funny idea. Let's move this down a bit. Stretch and drink water. Thank you. I actually do need that. Yeah, I get really distracted while I'm streaming, so I definitely forget to drink water. And Game Pulse, you said, should I try streaming me coding my own game? I'd say give it a shot, but if I'm being honest, I am not productive with coding while I'm streaming. I can kind of do this mindless, like level design stuff. I can do this. This is fine, but anything that involves coding that like it's actual thinking, which is most of it, then no, I can't really handle that too much. Because like last stream, there was a part where I was fixing a bug, and it basically was just me silently looking through my code. It wasn't very entertaining to watch or listen to because I kind of just had to stop talking and think about it. in order to figure out what was wrong. So I think that you should still try it to see how it goes for you, but also be prepared that it might not go very well because, yeah. I used to use Monogame. I never really used Monogame to make my own games, but I did teach Monogame on on Udemy, and that course is still up. It's still highly rated, but at the same time, I just personally prefer Love 2D. That's just a personal preference. I would probably get 0 viewers. I mean, everyone gets 0 viewers when they start, so you have to get used to that. Yeah, that's just normal. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. It's good practice anyway, because it's actually nice because when you have 0 viewers for the first, I don't know, few weeks, it gives you the chance to iron out all the bugs or figure out what is good about your streams and what's not good, and it's just lower stress at first, and reducing the amount of stress when you're starting out with something is always good. Am I using auto tiles in Tiled? I am using, if you're talking about the auto tiles, like the terrain sets, if that's what you're talking about, then yes, I am. So like, for example, I have the water ornate. Okay, so like these platforms here, this is a tile, a terrain. So I can just like draw this in. I don't have to go through each individual tile to figure this out. Instead, it's just the whole terrain set is plugged into one brush basically. And that's kind of how it's all put together. Okay, I need to move all of this down a little bit. Or maybe I can move... I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to move all this down just a little bit. Will you ever do a stream where you let viewers show you the games they've coded? I would consider that. Yeah, that's something that we could start talking about on Discord, because I bet there's a lot of people there that would be interested in that too. Oh, someone was asking about Monogame earlier. I like Monogame. I think it's a good framework and a good thing to make games with. But like I said, I just personally, I prefer Love 2D, so that's what I use. But any framework, they're all basically the same. They all behave in a very similar way, and once you learn one of them, you basically know all of them, you know, to an extent. There's enough similarities that it does make it easier to pick up another one. There are no good frameworks. I mean, that's debatable. I'm sure some people believe that, but I think that Love 2D is pretty good. It will always be hard to make games. So with like Unity or like you're saying, any game engine, they're all going to be hard. And that's why I always tell people, like, your first game, make it the easiest possible game possible, because even something like Space Invaders or Pong, that can be hard. If you're just starting out, it's the first one. So yeah, it takes a lot of patience and understanding that things won't be good at first. It's the same with streaming. Like, someone said that they would only get they would get 0 viewers at first. It's like, yeah, if you make a game, it might not be played at first. That's normal. I've been making games for a long time, and I haven't sold any games yet. Not one. I've never made a single dollar from selling games. And I've been making games my whole life. But I'll get there. It just takes time. You said you want to use Godot in your next game, but getting a feel for the editors like Unity and Godot is a learning curve on its own. Absolutely it is. That's why I don't say, like, once you learn Unity, like, learning Godot would be easier than if you didn't know anything, but it is still different. And when you build up skills in Unity, a lot of those skills are Unity specific. And the same is true with probably all of them. I know it is with GameMaker. I use GameMaker a lot. That was the first engine that I ever used, and I used it a ton when I was growing up. And yeah, I can definitely agree that that's true. You feel like that'll change when I finish this project? I hope so. I think it will. I think that this project will sell, but it's still a ways off. Your most popular game has 500 views. I That seems like a lot to me, if you ask me. Where's it at? Is it on itch? Because I don't actually know what like game views or downloads. I don't really know what those stats are even like, because the only game I ever published is Necrozone, and like that's just on mobile. I don't even know how many downloads it has. I really like GameMaker for 3D, or excuse me, I like GameMaker for 2D and Unreal Engine for 3D. I think that's a really good setup. I love GameMaker. I think it's awesome. The other thing that people need to keep in mind is that like you can make a good game in any engine. Someone mentioned earlier that it's hard to make a game in any engine, and that's true. And similarly, you can make a good game in any engine. It might be hard, but you can make a good game in any engine, that's for sure. So if anyone's out there like struggling to decide on one, it doesn't really matter. Just pick one, and it'll be fine. You'll be able to make a game with it. So let's try and figure out something else to do with this. And put this like here. You got stuck on the last world. I'm sorry to hear that. If anyone has it on Android, you have a legacy version, because it got removed from Android. It just got removed a few days ago, actually. Because it is... one thing people don't expect with mobile is that it is a pain in the butt. It is way harder and way more annoying than probably any other platform. It is a pain. But like once it's all done and ready and good, it's not bad. But it got removed because they changed their terms to where I have to provide more information. And I didn't want to provide it. I just wasn't comfortable with it, so it got removed. I'll fix it eventually, but sometimes you have to know when to say no to certain things that people are asking for. Basically, the Android marketplace needs to display an address, like a physical address, and a phone number, and an email, and I did not want to display that information. At some point, I'll be able to when I have like business addresses, but no. I'm not going to be displaying any addresses on my Android game that's free. Like, that's crazy. It's frustrating, though, that they removed it. This isn't the first time it got removed, though. Necrozone is actually based off of a different game that got removed. And maybe I'll do the same thing again in the future, where I remake it just again. Do the same thing all over again. You love my character design and overall feel. What was your inspiration, and what kind of challenges did you have with making it uniquely mine? That's a good question, and it's something that I struggle with a little bit still, because, you know, the character is cool, but it's definitely not the most unique design. It's just like a hooded character with glowing eyes, and that's almost like a cliche in the indie game space, because it feels like every game is like that. Like, I can look up Wizard of Legend, and I love this game. I think it's really good, but it does look kind of similar to mine. It has the glowy eyes and the hooded characters, but like gameplay wise, when you see this gameplay, this is way different than mine. Mine is a lot more slow. It's a lot slower paced than this. There is far fewer abilities. It's more methodical. And I mean, mine's also not completed either. And the Wizard of Legend is a roguelike too. It's definitely based a lot around building a unique set of skills for your run, and then using that to get through the whole game, which is definitely cool and fun, and I love this game. Mine's different. Mine is more like a Zelda experience, where you're building up a defined set of items and skills throughout the whole game. It says I have 0 hours played. That's not correct. That doesn't make sense. I have it in my library. I put like a dozen hours on this. I can get a PO box. Maybe I could consider that. That's an interesting idea. Wizard of Lemon. I just said Wizard of Lemon. Combo based. Yeah, it is combo based, because and that's part of my criticisms of Wizard of Legend, is that I personally found the optimal strategy for pretty much any build is to run into the crowd of enemies, your attacks immediately as the cooldowns are ready, and the hit stun on your attacks are so strong that it just stun locks everything infinitely. And I found it a little bit too chaotic, where I kept dying because it was so chaotic and wild, which, you know, again, that's a pro for a lot of people. But for me, it was just a little much. It was just a little much. And it's hard for me to draw comparisons with my game because I'm still making a lot of changes to my game. Even though I'm claiming it's more slow and methodical, that absolutely might change. And each of the fights that I'm making, they feel a little bit different each time. So let me go up and do one of these fights before I do anything else. Will I ever try Unreal? I tried Unreal when I was in college, and it's fine. It looks really good. I would say that in terms of like 3D realistic graphics, if you're going for realism, that's probably where it's at. I don't think you can do much better than that. But it's probably also not very good for a stylized game or something that's smaller scale because Unreal Engine is huge. Like, have you seen how big an exported game is? It's like enormous. So I'm trying to think of how like this combat here compares to Wizard of Legend, because this is obviously slower paced, and I don't really. I'm gonna have to think hard about how I want to actually describe my content or my combat compared to something like Wizard of Legend, because it's different. It's different, and I don't want to say it's just like worse or slower, because slow sounds bad. Slow sounds like it's a bad thing, and I don't really know if it's a bad thing. It's just different. What's my favorite weapon that I've made? Probably the greatsword, but I haven't touched it for a while, so it might be buggy. No, it still works. Good. Yeah, the greatsword's my favorite because I like how you carry it, and I like the combo. I like the slash into stab. I think it's really fun. But I'm like, if you didn't know, the current Steam demo that you can play is good, but I basically nuked the whole thing, and I'm starting from scratch. Not exactly starting from scratch. I'm taking everything out and then putting back in each of the individual pieces. So, like, I was concerned that the greatsword wouldn't even work because I've been changing so much stuff, but it does seem to still be working as well as it used to. Mine is more Zelda. Wizard has more skill cooldowns. Yeah. Wizard of Legend is really fast paced. It's also has the procedural generation and the randomness, and yeah, that's not what this game is. This game is open and consistent, and I guess calling it a Zelda-like is probably for the best. Souls-like. There's no reset, and it's not about building up an overpowered combination of skills. It's about exploring and building up your skills and using that to complete each dungeon in whatever order you want. You can't get the achievement. Yeah, actually, I forgot about that. Yeah, the achievement is not achievable at the moment. I'm sorry about that. I forgot about that. Yeah, I used to have an achievement where you could go into the menu and then equip a piece of jewelry, and then it would give you the achievement, but I changed it. Cosmo has a programming question? Yeah, ask away. I'm happy to answer programming questions. Have I ever thought about adding a glaive or halberd? Yeah, actually, I kind of did. So the reason why I didn't, or I decided against the halberd, is because I thought about what I wanted the attack set to be for the halberd, and when I want the halberd to be, you swing it like a slash and then you stab. So it would be like this spear stab, but it's preceded by a slash, like a wide slash. And then when I was playing that out, I'm like, oh, actually, that's just the same thing as the greatsword. And if the halberd would end up being the same as the greatsword, then I would just not do it. So if I do a halberd, I would want it to be distinct from the greatsword, but also distinct from the spear too. Excuse me. Why? Let's see. 3 divided by 4. Why is it equal to 0? Probably because you're working with integers, and it's just going to cut off any extra stuff. So it's called a floor division. So if you do 3 divided by 4, but you put this into an integer value, well, 3 divided by 4 is 0.75, but 0.75 isn't an integer, and so it can't store this 0.75 part into the integer, so it just deletes it. So instead, it just passes in 0. In the same way, let's think of a different example, like 5 divided by 2. This is 2.5. But if I tried to put this into an integer, it can't fit this 0.5 part into the integer, so it just deletes it, and the result is 2. Do I remember gamedev Utopia, a game developers community from India? I do! Wow, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, that was really cool. I remember that conversation that we had. Maybe far-reaching arc into charging rush forward. Yeah, so I have a lot of different thoughts on how I could do something like a halberd, because right now I'm sticking with like simple slashes and stabs and combining them into different weapons. But yeah, at the moment I'm keeping it kind of tight. You were a student there. Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, that was a neat conference, and that was definitely the first. I think that was the first university I ever spoke at. Was that one? That was neat. What if you did super powered items near the end of the game, and the halberd is a super powered sword? Yeah, something like that could work. Where I want it to be where most of the game you can use any weapon. They're all kind of balanced equally. And maybe towards the end of the game I can see and do something different. So let's go back to designing this map. I keep flopping around. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your message. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, sorry, I'm reading some of the chats. Yeah, T4TK is right that it's just the mixing of the types. Will you add a hook shot? I had a hook shot, actually, in an early version of the game. Actually, in Legend of Lua, I think I still have the hook shot. Let me start it. I haven't run Legend of Lua for a long time, so let me see if I can do it. Projects. Let me see. Uh-oh. It's in full screen. I don't know how to get it out of full screen, actually, because this is an old build. Hopefully I'm still streaming. I can't see anything because it went full screen, which is annoying, but this is Legend of Lua. This is on GitHub, so anyone is able to download this, and there is a hook shot. Wow, this is so silly. And you can hook onto trees, and like you can't go across the water, but you can hook shot across the water. So this is working. I took it out though because it kind of breaks the game. I made a much better version of this. So there's a later version. It must be in Moonshire. It must not be in this. But there's a better version of this hookshot where he like throws it and the animation is way better. This is like a weird stiff line, but at least it works. But anyway, that's the hookshot. Oh, where'd my there we go. I lost some of my tabs. No, I'm not streaming anymore. That'd be silly if I wasn't. Do you have any recommendation on how to decide to use shader versus coding visuals, more pixel art? Yeah, so it just depends. That comes from experience and figuring out when it's appropriate, when it's not. So, like, for example, lighting. Let me go into the dark area. So this area is dark. This area is dark. And you could do your lighting by using a vignette. And what a vignette is, let me see if I can figure out how I would do this. Streaming on Twitch? Yeah, I'm on both. Welcome, Prosto. Prosto Cotilio. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading that. The text gets kind of small in some of my screens, so I'm sorry I can't read that name exactly right. Welcome in, though. I appreciate that. So what I was going to show is like a vignette, for example, is you don't need to use shaders in order to like have that lighting working. You could instead cover the whole screen with black and then cut out the light and cut it out. So then the player is right here. Here's the player, he's a stick figure. And all this is, this vignette, it covers the whole screen. It covers everything except for the player. So then you don't need to use shaders for this lighting, because all you have to do is just draw this big box with a circle cut out in the middle of it. And that's called a vignette. And you can do like some fake darkness lighting this way, and it's really easy. But the problem comes in when you have multiple characters or multiple light sources. So like over here, this sunflower has its own light source, and the player has its own light source. So if they combined, it would be weird. If they both had vignettes, it wouldn't work. So that's a situation where you do need shaders if there's multiple light sources. But overall, if you're able to use shaders, that's probably for the best, because, for example, this room that I'm in right now also uses shaders to get the colors right. So if I go to my shaders, this room is slightly oversaturated, 1.1. I reduced the red by 15% to 0.85. And then I boosted the green and boosted the blue. And these are all things that I could have just baked directly into the sprites themselves. And that would have been fine. I wouldn't have to use shaders. I could just manually change the colors of these sprites, like in my sprite editor, to match whatever color scheme I'm going for. And that would be good. But then what happens when I want to change it in the future? Then it becomes a pain, because then I have to go back through all my sprites and update every single one to match this new color scheme that I came up with. But shaders are nice because I don't need to edit the sprites at all. All I need to do is just change these values and just, oh, I want everything more red. Well, let's just boost the red value. Let's boost it all the way up to, I don't know, to 1.3. And now you can see it. You can see that the room is more brown because it added more red. Even though the sprites themselves don't look like this, I'm able to kind of play around with different colors and do that out. Is it all Love 2D? Not exactly. I mean, kind of. But all the shaders are custom coded, because you can run shaders in Love 2D, but Love 2D doesn't have like built-in shaders. These are all GLSL. This is all GLSL code that gets run through Love 2D. So it's not exactly Love 2D doing the heavy lifting. It's kind of a combination. I'm using Raylib, and someone on Discord from Raylib told me that I can't make a transparent window, and I made it. Well, he must not know what he's talking about then. I'm glad you're able to figure out. That's cool. Will you add any Easter eggs into the game? Yeah, I probably will, but I'm saving Easter eggs for the end because things keep changing all the time, like constantly. And I don't really want to put the time into making an Easter egg when it's too likely that I'll just remove it. So anyway, I don't actually use different custom tools or I don't actually use any different tools for shaders. Unfortunately, I kind of have to just code them up manually, and it was a pain to figure this out, because there's not very many resources out there that teaches you like this GLSL stuff, especially when it's tied directly to the game engine, because this is GLSL, but it is also modified GLSL for Love 2D, so it's even more specialized. Well, all I'll say is that I'm considering it, and I want to do that, but no promises quite yet. Is it possible to do sprite order with tile map? Yes, it is. So the way that the tile map works actually is I'm doing it right now. So this water, for example, is below the the water is on this layer called base. I know that the text is small, I can't make it any bigger. But this layer I have highlighted is called base, and that's where all the water is on this layer called base. And then above it is this layer called terrain, which is where, or sorry, I put this one on the wrong layer actually. I was supposed to put this on terrain. There we go. So this terrain layer is what has these like floating platforms. And it's important that the draw order of terrain is above base, because if I put base above terrain, then the water is going to cover up those platforms like it just did right now. And if I move it back down to where it's supposed to be, they show back up. Is this tiled? Yes, this is tiled. This is what I use for level editing. What do I think about comments? I was using them and they were fun, but I realized I don't need them. Comments are really important because depending on how long you're working on your game, you never know what you'll forget. Let me see if I can find some examples of comments that I've written, because I write a lot of comments. Like, for example, this one's called fruit respawn time equals 600. And 600 isn't super clear, but I put in a little comment that just says seconds, and that clarifies that this is 600 seconds. And this tree.y off, it's like, sure, this is called y off, but what does y off actually mean? And specifically, it says oy is height minus y off. So this is going to move the sprite down. It's just basically changing the oy, or the center of the sprite. And without this comment, like, I just have to know that. And sure, I do. Sure, I do know what y off meant. I didn't need this comment here, but it is a nice reminder. And like seconds, for example, I might not have remembered that. Future you will thank past you for it, like T4TK or TK4TK. Sorry, I was saying your name wrong. It would be, it's good for you in the future because you'll forget all this stuff, but it's also good because if anyone else reads your code, it's almost necessary because they won't know what y off means. They won't know this is 600 seconds. Sure, I know that, but isn't it better to add sec at the end of the variable? Fruit respawn seconds. That would probably be a better name. You're right. You're right. At the same time, though, the longer your variable names, the more annoying it is to work with them. So sure, I could call this variable, I could call this oy offset vert. And this is more descriptive. This is a more descriptive variable name, but it is also longer. And I use y off in 53 different places in this file. And if the variable name was changed to that longer version, then my file just suddenly got longer and more annoying to read through because the variables are more just wordy. So that's true. Yeah, even if I say seconds, someone might misinterpret it. That's good. That's a very good point. I have a piece of code where variables are just A, B, C, and sure, that's fine, but it would be better if you specifically rename those variables from A, B, C, D, E into like a name for what they actually are. Even if you're just doing math, like calling it, like I make a lot of local variables. I bet I have some in here. I don't have any in this one. Let's go to a file that has local variables, because I name my local variables like really unnecessary things. I'm having trouble finding any local variables. Oh, I spelled local wrong. No wonder I can't find it. Local. Okay. Let's find a few locals. So this one's just called time. That's fine. Oh, here's a great one. Here's a great one. This is an awesome example. So I made this variable right here. It's called stspr. And this is not descriptive at all. But it is being set equal to this sprite of the gem statue. And even though this isn't descriptive, it's only used in one place. So actually, maybe this isn't the best example. Gem sprite. I guess you can kind of see what I'm going for here, where whenever I have a temporary variable, I name it something that's really simple. So I could have called this A. There's nothing wrong with calling it A, but calling it something with a little bit more context than A, I think is better. And yeah, I could call this a longer name that's more descriptive. I could call it a shorter name so that it's less typing. It's a balance, and it's always up to you. But that's what's nice about comments, is that you can just tell people what you were thinking when you wrote the code, and it's just good for everyone. So I understand people don't really care for comments, but it's a good habit to get into, and it's something I want to do with all of my open source code. I want to go back through and add more comments, because there are comments in Legend of Lua. In Legend of Lua. I have a bunch of them, but there's probably more I could add. And it would be nice if people could just open up the Legend of Lua code and read through my comments, and that's how they learned how the code worked. If the comments were so good that they kind of teach you the code itself. Can I make a snow owl? That's cute. That's a cute idea. We had when I was growing up as a kid, we had an owl that came to visit our house every evening for like a few weeks. His name was Poke. I think he was a snow owl because he was bright white. Do you have any thoughts on why locals have to be specifically denoted in Lua versus other languages that you have to declare global for variables versus code structure where it's just placed in the code? That's something I haven't actually thought about. I did forget that some languages don't use the local keyword. Does C# use that? C# local variables. And let me see TypeScript, because when I worked at Microsoft, I used C# and TypeScript the most, and I can't remember actually if they use the local keyword. So let's see, local. Here we have two local variables. Whoops. So this is TypeScript. This is the language I use a lot at work, or I used to. And in this case, it says when a variable is declared using let, it uses what some lexical scope. It's just saying this is local. Okay, so in this case, this is really awkwardly phrased, but this is saying that in TypeScript, let means local and var means global. So in TypeScript, at least, you do actually have to denote them separately. Let's see about C#. Whoops, I don't want to show that. Let me see. C# local variables. Let's try and find what C# does. Declaration statements, local variables, and constants. This is a good one. So, a declaration statement declares a new local variable. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So, you're saying that these just say int ABC. I'm sorry, this is kind of small. Let me make it bigger. These are considered global variables. Or sorry, these are considered, these are local, because by default, they're all local. To declare a local variable, specify its type and provide its name. So you're right. Every variable in C# by default is assumed to be local. And then I bet there is a global keyword, global. No, there's not. Global? Let's see. Where does it let you? Local constant. Implicitly typed. This is what happens when this is what happens when you stop coding in a language for a while, is you forget some of the details. Public and private. I mean, that makes it part of a class. C# global variables. You can't define true global variables, so you put them in part of the class. Okay, so you're right. Yeah, so this particular Stack Overflow is saying there's no global variables, you just have global classes, and then you have static properties that are a part of those classes. Yeah. So, that didn't answer your question at all, I'm sorry. You were asking what are my thoughts on the difference. I've gotten so used to specifying local that I prefer it. I can understand why someone wouldn't prefer that, but I like having to say local when I want a local variable. And like this trees here, this is global. So in an alternate universe, they instead made it so that in Lua you had to say global trees, and then you don't have to say local tree. So this is kind of how another language might do it, where you have to specify specifically if you want global. But in Lua it's different, where you specify if it's local, and otherwise it's global. What is a class? That's a good question. So a class is something that is specific to object-oriented programming. So languages like C# or Java or Python even, these all have classes and objects. And what that means is that, like for example, I'm describing this with a non-object-oriented language, so it might look a little bit strange, but we could say that my tree is a class. But in my game, there might be lots of different trees. So if I go here, there are a few different types of trees. There is... let me find a better example. I know that there's a really good example over here. I'm using my god powers to sneak through the environment. Okay, so this is an example I gave on a different stream, but let's say that I had a tree class, which in my code essentially I do. Lua isn't object-oriented programming, but what I'm doing kind of mimics it. And the way that a class would work is, like, I define a tree class. And so now, this tree right here, I accidentally got into a fight. I did not mean to do that. But this tree here is what that code is doing. It's just defining what this tree is and what it does. But also, there's a bunch of different types of trees. There's lots of trees, actually. Oh, he's bugged out. I'm sorry, this guy's bugged out. I need to fix that. The enemies are behaving weird with the fire. Lua has some OOP-like features. Yeah, that's the thing, is that, like, tables are so strong that you can basically treat them like classes. But, sorry, to get back to what I was talking about, I got interrupted by myself. If I wrote all this code for this tree, how it has, like, an animation and it has physics, I can't run into it. That's great. And all of that code is in this tree file. But then later on, I wanted to make this fruit tree. So this one with apples on it. It's the exact same thing, right? It's basically no different from the regular tree, except now it has fruit on it. So what object-oriented programming, or classes, help with doing is it helps with transferring all this stuff about trees to multiple different objects. So even though all of the code for tree exists for this type of tree right here, this fruit tree is a child of that tree. It's inheritance, like David just said. So this fruit tree inherited all the properties from the tree class, except it also has some new properties, like it has the fruit displaying on it, and I can hit the tree to drop the fruit. And now it's kind of just behaving like the regular tree again. And all of that's achieved through classes, is that this tree over here inherited all the properties from this tree, but added some additional stuff on top of it. And it's the same with, like, you can see this big tree up here. It's also the same tree class, but it has its own properties that are different, like its own animation, its own size. Like, if I pull up the collisions, you'll see that this tree right here has a bigger hitbox than this tree down here, and that sort of thing. So that's the way classes work, and that's kind of the way inheritance works. And like I said, Lua isn't technically an object-oriented programming language, but the way you can use tables, you can basically treat it as if it is. It takes a little bit of maneuvering. Some people would think it's ugly, but I don't mind. I like it actually. What even is the point of interfaces in a dynamically typed language? Of interfaces. Lua interfaces. I don't even know what you mean by an interface. Let me see. Interfaces programming. Java, sure. Interfaces in Java. I like it's funny because like I knew all this stuff at one point. When I was interviewing and I was like in college, I was a pro at all this terminology and I could answer all these questions because it's very academic. It's very academic talking about this stuff. When you work in a workplace, people don't use words like like one of my favorites was what's the proper name for getters and setters? It's called like I'm trying to remember what the actual word is. It's like mutators and accessors. Mutators and accessors. Oh my gosh. Yeah, getters and setters, accessors and mutators. So this is a really funny one. This is my favorite example to give people of like academic versus workplace, because in a workplace, absolutely no one in the right mind would ever say accessor or mutator. They would never say that. They would say getter and setter though. They would call it getter and setter. No one says polymorphism. They just say inheritance. Because that's basically what it... Well, okay, there is a difference between inheritance and polymorphism, but overall, it's just like object-oriented programming. But no one says polymorphism. They just say classes, object-oriented, inheritance, and all the different... Like, all of this overloading stuff, all that comes from polymorphism. So whenever I'm talking to you guys about, like, academic terms, like we were talking about object-oriented and inheritance and... interfaces. Someone talked about interfaces. I don't even remember what I just said interfaces were. Interfaces is an abstract type. Is used to achieve total abstraction, multiple inheritances. So it looks like an interface kind of just is a new type or an enum. Is it like an enum? It looks like an enum to me. Are abstract classes with basically only getters. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Shrek Eyes. I'm glad that Shrek Eyes is good at programming because I wouldn't have expected Shrek to be that good of a programmer, but clearly you know what you're talking about. How do I deal with resolution in cameras? That's a good question, and it's really difficult, honestly. So in main.lua, the first step is, or sorry, this is actually in game start. Game start. We have to first set the default filter. So pixels, when they scale up, you only program swamp simulations. That's pretty cool. Nice. Set default filter to nearest. So this is going to allow it to scale up seamlessly. Because when you scale an image, sometimes it makes it blurry. And this helps to make it so that it scales up with like pixel perfection. And that's really important. Then, I'm sorry if I'm making mouth noises. I'm trying not to. I think when I talk a lot, I feel like it like stirs up a lot of saliva or something because I'm getting a lot more mouth noises than I normally do throughout my day. So I'm sorry about that. But then the camera also has a scale, and it zooms in slightly. So it zooms in based on the window size, and it uses, let me see, do I have this in, it's in game start, set scale. So this function here, it reads the window height and uses that to determine what the actual scale needs to be, which means that, and I can show this actually. So let's go to somewhere I can demonstrate this better. This is pretty good. Okay. So in this example, we can see that you can see a little bit of water above the platform and a little bit of water below the platform. But if I shrink down the window to be half the size, or half the height, look, it's still showing the same amount of vertical space. It's still showing a little bit of water above and a little bit of water below. And if I shrink it even further, it's still the exact same. It just looks weird because the resolution of this window is absurd. Basically, this game runs and works perfectly fine at any resolution, but it always keeps the height ratio consistent. And that's my trick to making it work. I don't know if that's what every game does. I don't know if that's standard or if there's something better that you could do for this, but it works really well for me because any reasonable resolution looks good. Like 1080p looks good. A widescreen view, like even a view like this is really wide, and it still plays and works perfectly fine. I could shrink it down to be a tiny game window like this, and look, the game still runs perfectly fine. It behaves the exact same way. I'm very proud of how well this works. It works at any resolution, which is nice. Okay. You're writing in GDScript offshoot of Python. I believe it's object-based coding. Should I create classes for a bit of generic types of things first? If this is your first time coding, where you're kind of like not comfortable with it, I would say don't even worry about it. I would say just focus on getting your code to work. And then as you get more experienced, you can start to learn the tricks. Because if you try to jump right into coding with like best practices and having all your code organized via classes, I have a feeling you'd spend too much time on that, and it would make the code more difficult to work with. I would say just do it in a way that you know how to do it, or like any way that you can get it done. Even if the code isn't clean or good, if it works, that's great. And then as you get better at coding, you can start to be more mindful on how to organize your code into classes, because the whole point of classes is to make it so that you don't need to copy and paste your code. Like that tree example I was talking about earlier. It would be easier for me to just copy this whole file into a new file and call it fruit tree, and then suddenly it works automatically. It'd be way easier for me to copy this code. The problem though is that if there is any change that needs to happen to all the trees, then I would need to go through every single file and make that exact same bug fix to every single file. When instead, if you have a tree class, then that means all the code is just in one file and it's used throughout all of these different places. And therefore, if there's a bug, it would only exist in one file as opposed to every single one. That is kind of that's the whole goal. And when you're starting out, it's hard to understand where you can make those calls. It's hard to know how to do this when you haven't been taught. IMO, when it comes to making games, making mistakes is the best way to learn. I 100% agree with you. That is super, super good wisdom. I agree with that 100%. Go into any of your projects with the expectation that it won't really work out, but that you'll also learn a lot from that process. Because making games is hard. In the same way that it's hard to do any new skill, I always use painting as an example, because if it was your first painting and you tried to draw like a self-portrait, it's going to be really ugly, like really ugly. It would not look very good because it's your first painting. Like naturally, it's not going to be very good. But at the same time, you'll have learned a little bit about painting a self-portrait by doing that. Even if it turns out to be bad, like you still learned a little bit about like the perspective, about the shapes and using your paints and the brush strokes and all that stuff, so that the next time that you do a self-portrait, it'll be a little bit better. It'll probably still be ugly, let's be real. It'll probably still be ugly, but it'll be better. And it's the same with games. And it's the same with coding. It's the same with game art. Because that's the thing about games too, is that games are a combination of art, of music, of coding, of level design, of storytelling, of sound effects. It's all of those are separate skills. So that process that I just talked about with painting, you're going to have to do the same thing with coding. You're going to have to do the same thing with making music. You're going to have to do the same thing with pixel art. Because like if you haven't done pixel art before, the first time that you draw a sprite, it's going to be pretty ugly. But the second sprite that you draw will be a little bit better than that. And all the sprites that you make throughout the course of your life will just add up to make more skills for you. And that's definitely how I learned, because I made a lot of games when I was a kid with Game Maker, and that had a built-in sprite editor, and I would just like draw little characters and make them, and they were really ugly, but I can tell you for sure that the like in the first year were way worse than the sprites that I made in the second year. Picasso self-portraits arguably got worse over time. I forgot about that. That's a funny and sad factoid about him. I'm a tradesman, so I learned dozens of skills and the process of how to learn them. Learning how to learn is a really good skill. I broke my feet and I don't want to go back to working outside. Holy cow, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a different set of skills. But if you were a tradesman and you learned how to learn different skills, then learning coding will probably be a similar process, and it's going to have the same amount of frustration as when you first start off and you don't really know what you're doing. It's fun to do things that you're good at, and it's not fun to do things that you're bad at. Like when you first start learning an instrument for the first time and you sound bad, it's like not very fun. It's not very fun to play the trumpet when you can barely get a squeak out of it. It's not very fun to play the piano when all you can do is play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Like it's kind of boring. But the more you do those things, like you're going to be able to move on to more interesting stuff, and it gets more fun over time as you get better with it. So I assume the same is true with trade skills, and it's definitely true with game development skills, because I love game development now more than I ever did, and I think that's in part with me being just good at coding. I'm still learning art. I'm getting better, but coding is the one aspect of game development that I'm really confident with. Just keep randomly doing the minor pentatonic and pretend you're a blues genius. Honestly, not a bad idea. See, my trick is that I play guitar and I only know how to play chords. So I don't really know how to play guitar, but I can look up like the chord progression for any pop song and I can play along with it, which I think is fun. I find that to be a lot more fun than, because I know how to read sheet music. I played saxophone all through school, and I played bass in college. And I know how to read the music, and I played professionally in like in theater groups and stuff like that. So I know the different aspects of it. It's just playing guitar, I had so much more fun playing along to pop songs that I never really felt the need or the drive to like learn the sheet music, because I don't know, it's just not something I was interested in. I can play sheet music with saxophone, I can play it with with my bass, but guitar, I'll just stick with my chords. I'll be a campfire guitarist. That's all I need. I can't make a buffer always with same resolution, but it will not be good. Buffer always. If you're talking about a screen buffer, like on the edges? Saxophone life, yeah. I love playing saxophone. I actually stopped for a long time. I played saxophone all through college. Or sorry, I played saxophone all through high school. And I stopped in college because I just did, I played bass. And just last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, I got back into saxophone and played for a gig, and it was so much fun to relearn. But it's fun for me to talk about this stuff because I remember when I was starting learning music, and I was horrible. It was so hard. In fact, I started on a completely different instrument, and I hated it so much because I was so bad at it. And I imagine that's the same with like game engines, where you start with one, and it's so hard and uncomfortable that you try another one. But the second time you try a new engine, you're going to be smarter than the first time. So you're going to be bouncing between all these different ones, and eventually it's just going to click. And at that point, I think that you could probably just choose any of them that you like. The same with like learning instruments. Once you learn one instrument, learning your second instrument is quite a bit easier because a lot of the fundamentals do transfer. Especially if it's like a stringed instrument into another stringed instrument, that's really easy. But even if it's like, I went from saxophone to bass, and even that was really helpful because I already knew how to read sheet music. I knew the fundamentals of music. So even though it was in a different like clef, I had to relearn how to read the bass clef. I had to relearn how to play each note because like playing a stringed instrument is way different than playing on a saxophone. It was a lot smoother. It was a lot smoother and probably more fun to learn because I got better quicker. Dude, I love your videos on game design. Appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see. I did drums for a year in high school. I was so bad I hated it. But I did appreciate learning a separate rhythmic motion. That's something that I just straight up can't do, where you do like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. I'm not even doing it right, but I know what you're talking about. How like one hand is playing in 3/4 and the other one is playing in 4/4 or something like that. I get so impressed when people do that. I had to learn that a little bit when I was in high school. I played on the drum line for one season of marching band, and I was on the bass drum. So like, whoops, I'm sorry. I was on the bass drum, which is the one that's like the big one in front of you, and you walk around, you hit it like this. You hit it from the side. And I think we did have to learn that, like the asymmetrical drumming motion. I remember doing that. You had the classwork done when you were just doing individual local variables for each instrument. Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. I love that. I could never do polyrhythms or polymeters. Yeah, it would just be tough. Or it's a one-time event. Sorry, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Oh, am I planning to stream more? Yeah, so I stream on every Monday. I should put that on Twitch because I'm actually multi-streaming. I'm on YouTube and Twitch at once. So on YouTube, I've been streaming every single Monday for several months now. And now I'm going to be doing the same thing on Twitch. So it's always going to be happening at this time every Monday. And speaking of, I'm actually at the end of the stream. I always stream from 9 to 10:30, and it is 10:30 my time, and it's about time for me to finish up. But thank you so much for joining. This is the end of the stream. I am ready for lunch. The reason I stop at 10:30 my time is because that's when the restaurants open up, and I am hungry. I'm a Twitch guy, yeah. I like Twitch a lot. I like Twitch chat more. I think the chat is a lot better on Twitch, but YouTube has really good VODs and really good video player. And plus I'm already on YouTube, so that's kind of a win-win. But I will be on both. I'm planning to continue streaming every Monday on both YouTube and Twitch. So I will see you next week. Thank you all so much for being here. And I will see you next week for another Moonshire Monday. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.